Hello. A lot of people tell me they want to get better at cornering and descending. And there are many ways to get better at those two things, but a great way is to get better at braking. If you can brake well and efficiently, you will corner and descend better. And I have a great example to demonstrate this. So I was in Gran Canaria a few months ago, and there was a lot of descending there because there's a lot of climbing, so what goes up must come down. And I realized that I was getting a lot better at those descents. And the reason was not because I was actually getting better at going down, it's because I was getting faster and more efficient and harder at my braking. So I would brake harder, faster, right before the turn, and then I would be able to accelerate into the turn and after the turn. So the reason I was getting faster going down the hill is because I was spending less time braking, so I could gain speed, I could go faster, brake harder, and then go faster after that braking. And ultimately, that resulted in the whole time being faster on the descent. So one of the reasons for getting better at braking was I had switched from rim brakes to disc brakes. So if you are a tentative braker and you're always kind of riding those rim brakes, maybe now is the time to switch to disc brakes. You will get better modulation and power on disc brakes than rim brakes. And in the rain, disc brakes are a little bit better. Another reason, and this is probably the main reason why I got better at braking and descending and cornering, is because I started using my brakes correctly. For years, I had been using them incorrectly. So I realized I was braking wrong all those years because every time I had to replace my brake pads, the rear ones were very worn out and the front ones were almost untouched. So I realized I was braking very heavily on the rear brake pads, and that happened for both my rim brakes, and then when I switched to disc brakes, it also happened on those. And then I realized that on my bike, and on a lot of bikes, the front rotor is 160, the rear rotor is 140. Well, why is that front one bigger? The front one is bigger because that has better braking power. If you want to choose between the two and you have to make a sudden hard stop, you're better off going with the front brake. All those years I had been relying on the back brake thinking that was my most powerful when in fact it was the front brake. So now when I brake, I do apply both brakes at the same time, but if I'm doing a very hard, fast, heavy brake, then I'm gonna pull that front brake even more than the rear brake. So I try to use the front brake a little bit more when I'm doing hard stops. Now, one thing to be able to do this, use your front and rear brake selectively, you have to know which is which. So if you bought your bike in the US, most likely your right hand will be your rear brake. Sometimes they switch it up in other countries. The first bike I had was actually the opposite of that, but probably right hand is rear brake, and the way to remember this is right rear, RR. It's super simple, and I actually find myself repeating that as I'm biking and as I'm braking. I'm thinking right rear, right rear, right rear, pull your right. So the best way to practice this is just start going down a hill and play with your brakes. Brake with both, brake with just your left, brake with just your right. See what happens. Brake slowly, brake suddenly. And then you can add turns to that. So brake and turn. So you always want to brake before the turn and let your brakes go going into the turn and start to accelerate out of that turn. Kind of like driving. You brake before, set your line, and then shoot, go through. You can also monitor how you are wearing your brakes. So keep an eye. Is your front one wearing out more than your rear one? If that's the case, then maybe that's good because you should probably be relying on your front just a tad bit more. If your rear is wearing out faster than your front, then you're probably like me and you really need to adjust your braking style. And that might take time, but be patient, keep at it, and you'll get it.